devices to silence. If governance could please now switch on the live stream. I'd like to welcome everybody here this evening. I'd also like to welcome our viewers at home who are watching the meeting via the live stream this evening. Ladies and gentlemen, I now declare the council meeting of the 27th of August 2024 open at 6:39 p.m. Apologies, I have received nil. Approved leave of absence. I have a leave of absence for Mayor Mark Irwin, who was granted a leave of absence for the period 15th of August 2024 to the 15th of September 2024 inclusive. Councillor Kristicevic, could you please read the opening prayer?
You've got to stand. Yeah. Almighty God, we ask you to guide us in all our discussions, to show goodness, honesty, understanding and wisdom in all that we undertake to do. May we respect each other's views at all times, and we ask all of this in your name.
Thank you, councillors. If you could please stay standing. Councillor Olo, could you please recite the acknowledgement of country?
Thank you. On behalf of councillors, we would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land, the Whadjuk people of the Noongar Nation, on which this meeting is taking place, and show our respect for elders past, present and emerging.
Thank you, councillors. You may now be seated. Without prior approval, any recording of this meeting is prohibited. No action should be taken on any resolution of council prior to written advice from the city being received. Let's move on now to item 4, disclosures of interest. There were no disclosures from the Planning and Development Committee meeting held on the 20th of August 2024. From the council meeting from the 27th of August 2024, Councillor Andrea Criado has submitted a proximity interest for item 12.1/8.1. Mr Blanchard, have you received any other disclosures for this evening?
Thank you, Acting Mayor. There are no further disclosures.
Thank you. And just a reminder, if anybody else does have any disclosures for this evening's agenda, could you please fill them out and bring them up to governance? Item 5, petitions. I believe, Councillor Hatton, you have a petition which is unverified that you would like to table.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, I do have an unverified petition from 16 petitioners in the 1 Street in Gwelup in the Hammersley ward. It reads, we the residents of Brimwood Avenue, Gwelup, request that the city implement tree reduction strategies into the city verge tree policy with specific amendment to branch and foliage reduction of mature trees that impact on resident safety, property, wellbeing and amenity. We the residents are burdened daily and yearly by verge tree overgrowth near and alongside our properties on North Beach and Erindale roads in Gwelup. Residents' concerns are numerous, such as 1, living in fear of branch drops onto our houses and property, 2, having to excessively clear leaves and foliage from gutters and rooftops to avoid risk of fire, flood and gutter deterioration and replacement, 3, cost of maintenance as a result of city-owned verge trees, and 4, risk of injury and life as a result of city-owned verge trees. Madam Chair, I'll table that now.
Thank you, Councillor. Item number 6, responses to previous questions from members of the public taken on notice. Apologies. Let's return to item 5. Can I please have a mover and a seconder to accept this petition? Moved Councillor Peppard, seconded Councillor Olo. Can I just have a show of hands, please? And that is unanimous. Thank you, councillors. Moving on now to item 6, responses to previous questions from members of the public taken on notice. All public question time responses from the last council meeting were published in the minutes of that meeting. Now on to item 7, public question time. We have received some questions for tonight's meeting. Firstly, I would like to call on Mr. Robert Mitchell for your 3 questions, please, Mr. Mitchell. Thank you, Mr. Mitchell. Your name and suburb, please.
Good evening, Deputy Mayor, councillors, council officers and people in the gallery. My name is Robert Mitchell of Karrinyup and I've got 3 questions tonight, but before I do, I received in the email today from the City of Stirling a customer inquiry feed form. This is not a question, but it is relating to what my questions are tonight. I'm very disturbed about it because I had to, well, they say put up a survey. And when I clicked it over, it had 4 stars and then provide any feedback or suggestions for improvement. I clicked on that, and as soon as I did, a little window came up and there was a lot of business between Mr. Jardine and myself from God knows when that came up in a little window. And I went to get it again and it had disappeared. And I'm very upset about that. If I'm being spied on, you know, I don't like it. This happened to me a long time ago and a person threatened my life and I fixed them up at any rate. And I can warn now, whoever is behind this, they better take notice now because I'm no fairy.
Thanks, Mr. Mitchell. Is there a question in
now
there?
I'll start with my questions. The first one involves the e-tendering system at this council. It started a long time ago and I never bothered about it. But a while back I had to, my instinct said something's wrong here, and it was regarding Christmas tree lights in the 7 wards of the council, and it had a $350,000, which you might call a provisional sum. And when I read the details, as you can going online, it was absolutely ridiculous. So I tried to get into the main, I had to fully apply to what you might say, tender for the item. And that's ridiculous. I mean to say, anybody should be able to look at the plans and specifications, not just the details, which I'll explain in a minute.
Sorry, Mr. Mitchell,
one.
I don't mean to interrupt you, but I just would like your question, please.
Yes, I'm alluding to that at the minute. Do you want me to read out this one? This is relating to it. It is tender number 47460, tree maintenance, awarded 27th of November 2003. You're right, you take a reference of it. And this is the description. Yes. This 47460, tender title, tree maintenance tender description. The City of Stirling has an existing panel contract called 2 3.4, tree maintenance, arboricultural advisory and audit services, which comprises 2 panels as before with several contractors on each panel. The principal is seeking additional professional contractors to be part of panel 1. This tender does not involve panel 2, panel 1, tree maintenance services, panel 2. Arboricultural advisory and audit services not included in this tender. Advertisements detailed 16th of September 2023 in the West Australian. Okay.
Okay, Mr Mitchell, I'm going to ask you to get to the question, please.
Can I just finish?
No, please get to the question now.
It wasn't confirmed by the council. It came in with a person that authorised it, and it was an estimated $1,333.333. And it was authorised by Mr Stuart Jardine, and it was only an estimate. He is only allowed to approve $500,000. I questioned this, and then I was told it's not really a tender. Now
Thanks,
I'll
Mr
get back
Mitchell.
to
Get
my
to the question,
questions.
please. That's the last time I'll ask. Please move on to the question now.
I am now. I just thought I'd read that to you because of the stupidity and the incompetence of some people that have bygone this place. Now, is the council e-tendering system available to see plans and specifications or details of technical nature, accessibility, not having to log on fully into the tendering system? I ask for a simplified access to the embodiment of works intended via plans and specifications, be able at the front counter of the council. I found that due to the description I was supposed to accept detail of what was required generally, so of no common comparison.
Thank you, Mr Mitchell. We have
Does
the
the
question.
council and administration intend to provide a facility to inspect detail such plans and specifications via a portal at the services counter? Has
Okay,
anything
thank you, Mr Mitchell.
transpired
We have your
to
question in
correct
front of
and
us. Mr
install
Mitchell, Ms Hawkins is
less
going to
onerous
answer your
task?
question now. I'm going to ask you to please
That's
sit down,
available
Mr
now.
Mitchell. Mr Mitchell, sit down, please, and we're going to answer your questions as you have submitted. Thank
what?
you.
Well,
Thank you. Please
I've
take
just
your
asked
seat
a
now,
question.
Mr Mitchell.
I've just asked a
Okay,
question.
we'll answer your first question now. Ms Hawkins, please.
Am I getting an answer?
If you will allow the officer to answer, yes, you are. Ms Hawkins.
Thank you, Acting Mayor. Thank you, Mr Mitchell. And I appreciate we've talked about this before. The city deliberately moved away from having documents available, like hard copy documents, to the e-tendering system, because it really helped us ensure a much more robust and transparent process for our prospective suppliers. The full tendering process is managed in-house, so we advertise through the e-tendering system, but we manage the process in-house. As you've noted, anyone can register for the e-tendering system, and from there all the details are available, so the plans, the specs, etc. And really it should take less than 5 minutes to register, and then you can access information that you want. Just with regards to the tender description, I will say as a result of your inquiries, and I know you asked this before, we have broadened the tender description on the tender register, so hopefully that will also provide better snapshot information.
Thank you, Ms Hawkins.
Next question, please, Mr Mitchell.
I acknowledge also your email to me in relation to this matter, that it was entirely very hard to get a legal entity from the person in Canberra.
Mr Mitchell, you've got 2 more questions. If you'd like to move on to the next question, please, there are
will,
other people
yes.
here who have indicated for public question
yes.
time. Question 2.
My next question is, the value of parking is not always recognised. And I note this statement in a report on parking value, page 13 of item 3, tonight's addenda. Prices charged at parking bays do not take into account the full cost of parking vehicles, such as the lost opportunity to use the space for something else, the lost amenity and cost on the environment. And I refer back to question 2 on the 31st of July. And in that question, at that meeting, I referred to the lack of the use of Lot 3 Davenport Street in Karrinyup as much as utilising the community and library courtyard, part of that parking area for a display stand for various activities and vehicles display and selling. Both proposed for expressions of interest for use or leased. Currently, and for the last 50 years, the car park has been in advantaged use by the Karrinyup Shopping Centre for no income. Surely the community centre and library parking and use ratio is more than covered with half of the current base calculated. I note item 12.1 PCS 1 attachment, Inglewood Town Centre South Building, internal plan, page 32. This building has a restaurant. It's leased by the City of Stirling. Why can't that happen at number 3 Davenport Street?
Okay, thank you. Mr Quirk.
Through you, Madam Mayor, thanks for the question, Mr Mitchell. As we've previously advised, the City's continuing to investigate opportunities for lot number 3 in Davenport Street, which maximises community benefit and also the value of that land holding. A key consideration when investigating that land use will certainly be car parking accessibility, given its proximity to Karrinyup Shopping Centre. Without wanting to preempt the outcomes of that process, it's extremely unlikely the location will be used for displaying and selling vehicles. Karrinyup Library, in the meantime, remains a popular community facility, with the city spending $250,000 last year on upgrading the entry doors and the return chutes for the library itself. So we're continuing to investigate options, but it will not be used for the display and sale of vehicles, I wouldn't have thought.
Thank you, Mr Mitchell.
through you,
Question 3, please.
Through you, Mayor, I'd like to ask Mr Quirk.
That would be your third question then, if you have a question.
I'm answering the question.
No, sorry, Mr Mitchell. You must ask your
Can
third
I just
question.
clarify something? I want to find out, Mr Quirk asked or said in the last meeting that we've changed course. We're looking at some type of activity from someone in Sydney or the eastern states. There's always an excuse. This has been going
Sorry,
on
Mr
for
Mitchell,
12
what's the
years.
question? What's the question?
The question is, who and what are proposed to do something in the courtyard and provide an activity in this area where it's just sitting there as a waste. It should be leased out and
Thank you,
and
Mr.
some
Mitchell.
revenue come back.
Thank you, Mr. Mitchell. Mr. Quirk has answered that question. We are currently investigating that, and we will keep you up to date on the
Yes, well,
response.
I'd like a full
Now, if you'd like to
explanation
please
in the-
move
in the
on
reply,
to your third
and I'll be
question.
back next
Mr.
time.
Mitchell, please.
At any rate-
If you would like to ask your third question, please go ahead and ask it. Thank you.
I'll wait for your reply in relation to that question. My next question relates to, as has occurred in recent years, the date of the electors' general meeting will be determined in consultation with Mayor Mark Irwin. This will occur once the Office of Auditor General has provided the city with its assessment of the city's financial statement and annual report has been adopted. Yeah. Why does the electors' annual general meeting have to occur in step with the Auditor General's finished report? The Auditor General or representative can present that report at any authorised council meeting that the report has been presented. At the last quarter of the council calendar year. Recently, it does not have to be. Usually the council electors meeting is between September and November in a year.
Thank you, Mr. Mitchell, and I will ask Mr. Blanchard to respond.
Thank you, Acting Mayor, Mr. Mitchell, for your question. The annual electors meeting allows electors of the city to consider the annual report from the previous financial year. A critical component of the annual report is the audited financial statement. Under the Local Government Act, the annual report cannot be considered by council until the city receives the auditor's report from the Office of the Auditor General. As a result, this delays council's consideration of the annual report until we've received the audited statements, and therefore it delays the electors' general meeting. This delay is not confined to the City of Stirling and is a matter being investigated by WALGA on behalf of all councils.
Thank you, Mr. Mitchell, for your questions this evening. If you'd now like to take your seat, I'll ask Leisha Jack to please come forward with her questions. Public question time has now been in progress for 15 minutes. As Chair, I rule to extend public question time for either as long as it takes to answer the remaining questions or 30 minutes. Ms Jack, if you would just like to give your name and suburb, please.
Good evening, Acting Mayor, councillors, staff, members of the gallery. My first question. The state government has initiatives and guiding documents that are focused on getting people out of cars and onto public transport. Sorry, it's sort of a bit too far forward. And participating in active transport such as walking and cycling, as does the city, WALGA and other local governments. The state government is extremely concerned about the growing number of parents driving children to school. They have created an active travel to school website page where you can find their active travel to school roadmap for 2023-2030. They say that fewer Australian children walk and ride bike ride to school than ever before. Over the past 40 years, the national rate of active travel to school has declined from 75% to 25%. In Perth, that rate is as low as 20%, and one half of children travel to school by car despite living less than 1 kilometre away. Ms. Acting Mayor, parents driving children to school is bad for the children. Physical and mental health stifles independence and resilience. They significantly increase traffic, especially around schools in the mornings and afternoons. This is a huge problem for society. It causes...
Sorry, Miss Jack, just wondering what the question is.
Yep, sorry. There's no one here tonight. I know we've been, but this is about children's health, safety.
I appreciate that.
Yep.
I appreciate that, but
yep.
it is question time.
I know. But, okay, so it also affects the economy by reducing productivity of workers who need to get to school, need to drive their cars on the road. So my question is, what is the city actually doing to encourage and assist schools to educate children and their parents about sustainable and active transport, to discourage parents from driving children to school? What is the council actually doing? What's the city doing?
Mr Murphy?
Through you, Acting Mayor. The city's actually employed an active transport officer, and that
Full-time?
Full-time, partly funded by state government. That person is fully dedicated to active transport, and that person does a lot of work with schools on travel plans to get people out of cars, and that is a big focus of the work. So we're very active in that space.
Fabulous, thank you. Second question. City officers have publicly stated that they remove about 700 trees a year from the city-owned land and that land and the land they manage for various reasons, which include being planted in the wrong spot. Removing a tree can cost anywhere between $1,000 for small ones to well over $10,000 for big trees in awkward spots. Now with this shot-hole borer outbreak, the number of trees will be significantly increased. We're talking about millions and millions of dollars. Not to mention the cost of them some of them having to be replaced. There must be some accountability about this. It is not good enough that the city has an expert panel who decide secretly what will be removed and from where without any scrutiny, public scrutiny, disclosure. Acting Mayor, do you yourself agree that there needs to be some sort of a list where tree removals stating their location, species, etc., and the reason for their removal is made publicly available on the city website? And if you don't think it should be made public, can you please explain why it should be kept secret?
Ms Jack, this evening is not about me and my opinions, but I will defer to Mr Murphy to respond to your question.
Through you, Acting Mayor. Ms Jack, you are correct. We do remove trees for lots of reasons. As you know, we value our trees greatly and remove them only when we have to. So it is a difficult thing, and you're right, some of the costs are expensive. We are just dealing with the beginning of the implications of the shot hole borer. That's work that we're doing in discussion with state government and WALGA about how that might affect us in the future and how those costs might be covered. So, but at the moment, that is a very small number of trees have been removed for that reason, less than 20, I believe. So that's not currently an issue for us.
Ms Jack, your third question, please.
Yes, okay, look, regarding this parking item, I'm really concerned about parking in the city of Stirling. A lot of the trees are very small and sickly looking. They're not providing shade, which is supposed to be their purpose, to reduce the urban heat island effect. Could this item please go back and address more about putting in decent-sized trees to create shade, which is what trees in car parks are supposed to do?
Thank you, Ms Jack. The item's up for consideration tonight and council will debate it tonight. Thank you for your questions. Can I ask Mr Roland Hadley to please come forward?
Good evening, Roland Hadley, Woodlands. At a previous council meeting, a matter was raised that the city's vehicles were being sent to the panel beater contractor S&A Smash Repairs with very minor scratches and dents, which is not a very satisfactory situation. Has this matter been followed through and investigated by the appropriate department and a report provided to the council and your ratepayers?
Thank you. Mr Murphy?
Yes, through you, Acting Mayor. I can't remember the previous question, but what I can say is obviously the city has a fleet of vehicles that it looks after. It does carry out repairs when there are the cars involved in an accident or there are dents and scratches. And also the cars receive some of that treatment before they get sent for auction, so we get best value. So that is something we do as a part of our normal business, and that is something, that cost is what we track through our annual budgeting process. That's just, as I said, normal business for us.
Yes, we know that, obviously. But the question of sending a vehicle down to a panel
Sorry,
beater...
Mr Hadley will provide you with further information.
Thank you. Question 2. What were the projects Mayor Mark Irwin and former CEO Stuart Jardine agreed to for the position of Strategic Advisor in December 2023? This question was previously asked at a council meeting, but no answer has been provided.
Mr Blanchard?
Thank you, Acting Mayor. It was my understanding that an answer was provided, Mr Hadley, but I will follow that up and get a written response to you.
News to me, but never mind. My third question, I just want to make a few comments about this trackless tram fiasco, as we call it, before I ask the next question. We have been informed that the 8 by 7 metre banner costing a measly $6,927 advertising the trackless tram trial has been demolished. This seems a great waste of resource. We wonder why it couldn't be donated to a school or art college, and is this a fine example of recycling by the City of Stirling? That's the first comment. I won't ask for any answers, thank you. A further comment raised by the Ewan Street Community Group and other ratepayers, wishing to know why it has taken 1 year to discover that the city had done a deal with the Rendezvous Hotel not to charge for the hire of a conference hall for the Trackless Tram Symposium.
Ms Wilson-Croft?
Through you, Deputy Mayor, and thank you, Mr Hadley, for the question. The Rendezvous were a conference partner, so they provided the room hire at Rendezvous as part of that arrangement as sponsorship towards the Net Zero Transit Symposium.
Yes, but why was that information not declared to people generally?
I don't think it was kept from anyone.
Through the Mayor.
Through the Mayor, thank you very much.
Through the Mayor. No, I don't think that information was ever kept from anyone. That was part of the, provided to you as part of the cost of the symposium.
Okay, thank you. I was advised on the 11th of June that the recorded minutes that it was not appropriate for me to receive information for specific functions, i.e. cutlery costs, napkin costs, no tablecloth costs, but it now appears that $38,300 was charged for catering. Why was this information not previously provided, which I refer back to August or November of last year?
Ms Wilson-Croft?
Through you, Deputy Mayor. Mr Hadley, that cost was provided to you as part of the overall cost of the symposium. The $51,261 included that cost.
But again, that information...
Through the
Through
chair.
the chair, Acting Mayor, this information was not provided in detail, and detail is what we sought. And it's taken since August 23 and November 23 to get information.
Thank you,
from this
Mr Hadley.
council.
I will follow up on your
Thank you.
behalf and ensure that that information is passed forward to you. Thank you for your 3 questions this evening. If you'd like to now take your seat. Thank you.
In the-
Councillors, moving on now
Excuse
to
me.
item 8.
Excuse me, Acting Lady Mayor. Can I just continue on with another couple of questions? in the-
No,
in the
no,
event-
Mr Hadley, you've asked your 3 questions.
That is it. Thank you very much.
Sorry, thank you. Thank you for coming this evening and asking your questions. Councillors, I'm moving on now to item 8, applications for leave of absence. Councillor Rob Papard has requested a leave of absence for the period 17th of September 2024 to the 22nd of October 2024 inclusive. Councillors, are there any other requests for leave of absence? No indication? Then I will ask you, councillors, can I please have a mover and a seconder to approve the requested leave? Thank you. Moved Councillor Hatton, seconded Councillor Ray. All those in favour, show of hands. And that's unanimous. Thank you, councillors. Moving now to item 9, page 9 of your agenda. Can I please have a mover and a seconder to accept the minutes of the ordinary meeting of council held 13th of August 2024? Moved Councillor Perkov, seconded Councillor Dudek. All those in favour, show of hands. And again, that is unanimous. Thank you, councillors. Announcements by the presiding member. Councillor Perkov, I believe that you have an announcement to make this evening.
I certainly have, Madam Acting Mayor. Look, the City of Stirling regularly receives awards and all kinds of commendations. So it's refreshing to see that one of our local clubs, and it probably goes across to all the clubs, have presented the City of Stirling something recently. On Sunday, the 18th of August 24, I, along with Councillor Chris Hatton, attended a Stirling Saints Junior Football Club sponsors and supporters brunch. And I'm pleased to present to Council a framed certificate thanking the City for its support for the club. At this event, Councillor Hatton and I were pleased to be able to advise the club that Council has approved funding on this year's capital budget to develop options and designs for improvements to their club rooms at Richard Guelph Reserve. Sporting ovals and reserves that are well maintained and that have quality sports lighting and facilities deliver better opportunities for our sporting clubs and their members and the community to be part of and enjoy quality sporting opportunities. Junior sporting clubs are the heart of our community, fostering teamwork, discipline and healthy lifestyles among our youth. The City is proud to continue our support for these vital programs in various ways, ensuring they thrive for generations to come. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Perkov. A round of applause for the Stirling Junior Football Club. Well done. The Saints, go the Saints. Moving on now to item 11, unresolved business from previous meetings. I have nil. Item 12, reports and recommendations of committees. Let's go to page 10. Councillors, we will now deal with the items from the Planning and Development Committee meeting. Governance has not received any alternative recommendations at this time. Item 12.1/8.1 is required to be pulled out as Councillor Criado has a proximity interest. As this is a confidential item, it will be held behind closed doors later in the meeting. Councillor Criado will be asked to remove herself from the chamber during discussion and voting on this item. Does anyone wish to pull out any other items? Councillor Ray?
Yes, thank you. 12.1 CF1, please. Thank you.
Any other indications? No? Okay, let's move then to item 12.1 CF1. I'll go to Councillor Proud, please.
Thanks, Madam Chair. I'm very happy to move the committee recommendation. Page 10. Unanimous.
Thank you. And is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Hatton. Anyone opposed? There are questions. Councillor Olo, did you indicate a question? I'll allow the question.
Thank you, through you, Madam Mayor, Acting Mayor, sorry. My question is to the, through you to the officers, this parking principle that we're proposing to pass, is this going to be part and parcel of the LPS 4 as...
Citywide, don't worry. Keep going.
Yeah, LPS 4, where our decisions are made, because reading the item, it is stating that through development, future developments and all that, our planning on parking is going to be part and parcel of this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Olo. Ms Shears, if you'd like to answer, please.
To you, Madam Acting Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Olo. No, these are citywide principles, so they will be used to inform future policy work that will then come back through council, but this work won't directly be inserted into LPS 4. It's a separate piece of work.
Does that answer your question? Councillor Lagan, do you have a question?
Yes, I've got a couple of questions.
Fine. Go ahead.
Yeah, through you, Madam Acting Deputy, I almost said Premier there for a minute, Mayor. Can officers just enlighten me? On page 11, it states, strategic planning direction from the state government was identifying the need to curtail urban sprawl by achieving infill landfill targets and reducing private vehicle usage through promoting sustainable transport. Can officers tell me whether or not the state government has funded any options for sustainable transport in the City of Stirling, including a trackless tram?
Ms Shears.
Through you, Madam Acting Mayor, the state is working currently with the city in terms of PTA bus lanes that we're looking to install along Scarborough Beach Road, but no specific infrastructure such as Metronet through our city at the moment.
Thank you. Second question through you, Madam Acting Mayor. When I look at this parking strategy and I read through it, one thing that stands out for me is, yes, it's a change, but I'm not sure that it 100% deals with one of the things that's happening on the ground. If I look at the units that were built just at Dianella Plaza, and I went out there today just to double check on it, we're having placed, because of this government policy for urban infill, we're having placed townhouses, units, large unit developments in centres, like near shopping centres, near trains, etc. That particular unit development had underground parking, which is full. It had parking that is beside the building or in front of the building, which is set aside as 5-minute parking. I went out there today, every single bay at the front of that development was full and had been full for hours. We don't ticket people who use those bays, and we don't have limits to ensure that they get out of the bays so people can use them. That one in particular in Dianella causes problems for the local primary school. I spoke against it. I believe other councils spoke against it as well. And this parking principle, in my view, needs to be more aggressive towards when developments are dropped on us by JDAP or SAT, so that the parking that is not provided for those who visit or stay overnight or visit from the country isn't just parking that's used up constantly for hour after hour. And I don't think it's up to the state government to say to us, oh, but that's your problem.
Sorry, Councillor Lagan, what is the question?
My question is, what will we be doing in a future policy to ensure that the development that is landing in all of our wards has adequate parking, or that we police the parking so that it is released for people to use?
Thank you. Ms Shears.
Through you, Madam Acting Mayor. With regards to car parking, it is controlled by the state R codes, so we are obligated, if a development is compliant, and it is not necessarily a 1 bay per bedroom scenario, so it's a ratio per number of bedrooms, and then that's worked out across a whole development. It's very difficult for the city to have a different ratio for that because it is controlled by the state R codes. We also aren't able to control how many residents have vehicles in each of those apartments as well.
Yeah, and I thank you for the answer, and through you, Madam Acting Mayor.
Councillor Lagan, unless you have a further question,
Yep.
I am going to move back to the mover and the seconder as Councillor Ree indicated that she was opposed. I did not see that she indicated she was opposed.
Happy for them, and then you'll come back to my
I can come back to you for
Excellent,
further
thank you.
questions if need be. I will go to the mover. Councillor Proud, please.
Thanks, Madam Chair. This was discussed at length at planning, and it's unfortunate for those that couldn't get there to ask questions and find out a little bit more. Look, we're dealing with a 2009 strategy, management strategy, and it's about dealing with ongoing and growing pressure points throughout the city. As the city's population grows, we need to be addressing certain things. So one example that I think I have this right is Mr. Giamov here. Mr. Murphy will be able to correct me if I'm wrong, but you know, previously, if you had an adequately wide street, as in say 7.2 metres, which would allow a car either side and people to park through, certainly around schools, churches, etc. I'm talking high schools because high schools have P-platers, lots of them. And those P-platers, not sure how they got their P-plates even because they're parking across people's driveways, etc., for the whole school day. Therefore, tradesmen, visitors, whatever, can't get to those people that live very close to senior high schools. So this is about addressing those things that, whereas the policy didn't allow it before, it's a review, it's an update, it's a refresh. So this is what it's all about, working with 2004 up to, 2034. We need to grow with the times, and we'll review this again, probably in 5 years or so, as things get worse. And it's all very well to be blaming the state government. I do as well. Anytime anybody gives me grief about the city being greedy about getting rates, etc., because we allow all this infill development, I tell them straight, very clear, state planning legislation. Yeah, but what about the parking? And I get that. And that's a state government legislation law that our officers are obligated to abide with. And we just pass it on. So I tell all and sundry that this comes from the top. Now, let's not all just jump on the current government. Whatever government's in, they have that state planning control. They haven't handed it to local governments. So we just need to suck it up, deal with it the best way we can, and this is exactly what we're doing. We're dealing with it, reviewing, updating, and amending things that we can do better in pressure points that we're finding within our 30 suburbs, very congested city, very busy city, the most highly populated local government in WA and probably 13th in Australia. So we've got a lot to deal with, and our officers deal with it very well. So I'm fully supportive of this matter, and I hope you all support it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Proud. Councillor Hatton.
No further, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Ray.
Thank you. The reason I actually opposed it and drew it out is because I actually don't think it's written hard enough to address the issues that are going on at the moment. It might be a principle overarching the policies to come back, but I don't think the principles are there. We have spoken so many times, and you don't have to go to one meeting to know that there is parking issues. This has come to this council many times. Those that have been on DAPS that have seen 200 people come here about arguing over a development because of the parking. It's not new. The planning issues aren't going away, but this is not addressing it as much as it should. One of the classics is when a development is being built, and according to the development approval, they have to have a parking management plan. which is over here, and our parking guys, who do a fantastic job, and sometimes I don't think there's enough of them, are over there, and they can only go in accordance to the parking infringements. They can't cross the line to the building, to the development approval. That's one issue when it's being built. But another issue which has arisen in the last couple of days, which has got people more angry, is where you've got a development, a high-rise, which had 2 houses, now 28 units, with 2 visitors' bays, and then we're planting all these trees on the verge, which we should do, and because people are getting narky, last time they did that, they just pulled out the trees, but now what they're doing is they're actually parking in people's driveways and their houses.
Councillor Ree, if I may, I'd like to ask Mr Roddy to comment on what you've put forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Acting Madam Mayor. Councillor Ree and councillors, it's quite clear in the report that these principles do not apply to the assessment of development applications. And Ms Shear confirmed that an assessment will be carried out on a case-by-case basis in accordance with the frameworks which apply to that. So that needs to be clear. The purpose of the principle is in your conclusion of this report, is to enable consistent, informed and flexible approach to the supply and management of car parking throughout the city. So I understand that the pressure points with development and Ms Shears and the team, of course, when they carry out assessments, do take the impacts on the community and you know, of a development through car parking and traffic management, and also from the community. But these principles are actually of how we manage the supply of car parking throughout the city.
Thank you very much, Mr CEO. And yes, that's good. We all read that. That was really good, and thank you for reminding us. However, it doesn't still go strong enough in which to support the residents and the parking. I believe that when the Community Services Branch, they make a report on the DAPs, right? And they make a report regarding parking, traffic congestion. Why can't we make it stronger in the city to not tolerate it? They don't have to listen. We know that state government doesn't have to listen, but at least we can make it stronger so that they know that we're not going to be just bullied over, so that the planning, when it goes to DAPs, we can sit there and say there must be something done. So whether we get, if we have to have parking permits to respect the local residents, then they have to pay for it. Somehow we're going to have to make it tougher, and I don't think this is addressing it. But I understand the principles. I don't have a problem with that. My other comment is with regard to page 23, where we say the transitional arrangements are appropriate to allow parking providers to adapt to urban growth while not being detrimental to the urban design and character of the area. Phased implementation of policy modification changes to on-street parking controls. That's what it is now. Why aren't we getting some more guts in there to sit there and say, hey, there's a shortfall of parking when we get these development approvals? I mean, that's like a motherhood statement. We need more guts in it to show that the developers and the builders that we're being serious. You cannot sit there and say to people, this is not on. I know in Melbourne, in some of the buildings they've got now, they have no parking whatsoever, and they tell the tenants, you will not park in the surrounding streets overnight. That's what it says. And if they do, they can get fined, because what they're trying to do is make it sustainable. So you can't sit there and say, we've got a sustainable building, no parking, but it's all right to annoy all the local residents.
Ms Shears, would you like to comment, please? Mr Quirk?
Through you, Madam Chair, excuse me. The city does already have, through our parking local law, the ability to deal with all of those issues. The parking principles that we're seeking council endorsement of tonight is really to give us that, I guess, pragmatism moving forward as many of the issues that you refer to arise, that we have the ability to adapt our policies, to adapt our management practices, to adapt parts of our management framework and enforcement of parking. So importantly, all of the issues that you've just referenced there, we can actually enforce through our existing parking local law.
To you, Madam Chair, we've got the issue at Tassal, Scarborough, there's quite a few now, that even with the rubbish bins, to put out their rubbish bins, which again go on a development approval, waste management, which, you know, it says under the DAPS, we'll sort out with the city later, never happens. You know, you've got 30 rubbish bins, they take over 2 or 3 parking bays, they are there for 2 or 3 days, rubbish going everywhere, and people can't park because the bins are in there. And I mean, when you look at Tassals, who's already got limited parking, the poor parking guys, what are they supposed to do? They've got to sit there and go, well, we've got to be fair to the rubbish guys. I mean, it happened again this morning. Had to call security out because people couldn't get, the waste guys won't empty the bins, and I won't go into that one. They won't empty the bins if they can't get to the rubbish bin, which is fair, and the cars in front don't belong to anybody in the street. And what are the parking guys going to go? Well, they can't do anything because, you know, they're not committing an offence. They're just sitting there.
Thanks, Councillor Ree. You've now been speaking for 5 minutes, so I will now rule to allow you to speak for a further 2 minutes.
Thank you very much. That's very kind of you. I just think that when we're looking at it for on-the-ground issues, the waste management, the parking of people, something has to get stronger, and we have to be a formidable force with our bylaws, whatever we're going to do to show the DAPS that we're serious. Because developers can't keep putting, it's ridiculous. We can't keep having things approved and the city then has to follow up with all the complaints. That's a huge amount of time the staff and councillors are doing just for someone to get 20 more houses into one little lot. So I don't think it's fair on the staff, not fair on the councillors, that we're doing this. But something has to go to a hill, and I would like this to be stronger. And I don't know how you would do it, Madam Chair. I don't know if you want another rider at the bottom to say, an addition to say this could be stronger, or I'll take it on advisement.
Thank you, Councillor Reid. That's noted. I will now go back to Councillor Lagan if you have further comment.
Madam
Councillor Lagan.
Mayor, I'm not going to add anything to it. I think the points that myself and Councillor Reid have raised are valid points, and hopefully over time we'll be able to speak to officers about tightening up some of the things we see that actually are on the ground for our communities.
Thank you. Councillor Ferrante, you indicated.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Acting Deputy Mayor. I just wanted to, just a quick point. Just recently, and I won't name the location, but it's on Walcott Street in a recent unit development. We apply the same R codes to that development as in relation to parking. What I'd like to bring to the attention of the officers, and perhaps a question from this, is the proximity, and a lot of these are based on corridors in relation to public transport. How does a development like this get approved in relation to the R codes of parking when it's not close to any public transport and people need to walk a considerable amount of metres, yet we apply the same principles? That's perhaps something where Councillor Lagan was leading towards, that we need, if it's a case-by-case process as the CEO is allowed, well then we need to look at, if that's the case, then how far away is the closest public transport, and shouldn't that become a factor in relation to additional parking bays in any new development? So that's a question I pose to the officers. Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Deputy.
Ms Shears.
Through you, Madam Acting Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Ferrante, for the question. The specifics of each development application are assessed under the R codes and aren't related to these principles here tonight. What the R codes say in relation to car parking, the city is unable to change. So it's an aspect of the R codes which can't be varied. Even if we tried, the WAPC wouldn't support us in putting that forward. In saying that, certainly when officers are assessing individual development applications, location on key activity corridors and proximity to activity centres is one of the factors, and it's outlined in our local planning strategy in terms of that's where we have intended our growth to be located, on the premise that that is the most likely, if it's not there already, public transport route and ability for people to get that transport. In the development applications I've been involved with, there's only been one where there was, that I'm aware of, where visitor bays was slightly reduced. All the others that we're seeing are providing all of the required car parking, if not more in some instances. But if they are compliant with what the R-Code's rate of parking says, it's difficult for us to require them to provide any more, even if people's lifestyle or choices is that they have multiple cars in those units. It's the same as scenarios. We have a number of old flats and apartments throughout the city that have 2 and 3 bedrooms and they only have 1 bay as well. So it's a problem that we are still dealing with across the city.
Thank you, Ms Shears. Councillor Kristicevic.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Just wanted to get some confirmation around the parking from the point of view of when a development application comes through and we write a report, is there any possibility in that report that we could report back to the developer or put a condition on it saying that we want the public to know there's a parking problem in this area, in the streets, and there won't be any basically flexibility other than what you're getting in the development, and even having that as a condition. So when they sell a unit to someone, they know they've got 1 parking bay and there probably won't be anything else available. So how do we somehow get that message across to the purchasers and to the developers and to the government, saying, fair enough, you can do 1 parking bay for a 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom or 1 bathroom, but we want you to know in advance, this is how this street functions, and we already know we can't make any changes to it in advance rather than have to deal with the problem afterwards. And
Thank you, Councillor. Ms Shears.
Through you, Madam Acting Mayor, there have been scenarios where there have been additional conditions placed on developments where there's a shortfall in, say, visitor bays, to let certain residents know that that particular unit might only have 1 bay, but it's not to say that if you purchase that unit and it's, say, 2 or 3 bedrooms, it's not to say that they can't then park their vehicles on the street if that's lawful according to the city's parking policies. So when a development goes in, we do work with our rangers if a problem arises to ask them to look at those particular area again, but it's difficult until a development has been completed and is fully operational to understand what the impact of that development will be on the local area.
no, thank you. Just further to that, I suppose, we've probably got enough experience now to know when a problem's going to happen before it even happens or even comes close to happening. So the question really is how, I don't want to be dealing with it after the whole thing's built, having people in the gallery saying, I've got no parking, my car doesn't fit in, it's too big, I've got 3 kids, they park, you've got to change all your parking, you've got to do all these things to accommodate me because I bought this and the state government says I only get that. It's your point, you need to fix it now. So how do we somehow get a clear message to say, for example, and I use Vivaldi here where they were here lining up yesterday. Now, interestingly enough, on the Friday night, I bumped into someone else who lives in that area, and as opposed to saying more parking, their issue to me was on Osborne Place, people park on the road at the bend, and they go, when I drive there around that bend, I nearly have an accident, cars coming the other way. So I want you to get rid of all the parking on Osborne Place because it's dangerous, right? So on the one hand, you've got people saying, I've got not enough parking, and now someone else is saying, get rid of the parking, it's dangerous in that particular spot. So we find ourselves in this conundrum of trying to solve these problems.
I'll ask Mr Quirk for comment on that.
Thank you, through Madam Chair. Yes, the conundrum of parking. In that very area, we have residents who don't want parking controls. 2 streets away, we have residents who want parking controls. So that is really why the principles are pragmatic and flexible enough that we can apply them to a variety of situations, because planning context is different in many parts of the city. Beaufort Street that Councillor Ferrante just referred to is very different to Vivaldi Lane, is very different to the parking issues we face at Scarborough. So there isn't a single answer, and I don't think no matter how much wordsmithing we do to these principles, it won't cover every scenario. What we're comfortable with, the level of work that we've put into this, we've I guess, practically applied it to some of the policies and projects that we're currently pursuing, and we're comfortable that these principles are strong enough yet flexible enough to deal with that conundrum of parking, as you put it.
Yeah.
Thank you. And I'll just ask the CEO for further comment.
Thank you, Acting Madam Mayor. Councillors, Manager of City Futures just told me that our car parking policy 6.7 will be coming back. It was currently being reviewed at the current moment and will come back through committee later this year, early next year. So that will be an opportunity for council to look at, as Councillor Ferranti commented on, dispensation for parking being located to do public transport, those things. So there's an opportunity there. Noting that that policy is not specific for residential development, but of course what most of these developments we're talking about now tonight relate to mixed use development, which have that commercial aspect. So you do have the comfort that that policy is being reviewed and that you will have visibility over that towards the end of this year. Look, as I said before, this policy, these guiding principles don't apply to development applications. Look, but we note the comments from the councillors tonight, and of course Ms Shears and her team are fully aware of parking and availability of parking when developments come into new areas and the impact on the local community, and we'll adequately manage that. But look, these principles are here just to provide the foundation for how we consider all those parking mechanisms across the city and enlarge the management of car parking. So look, we note the comments, but you will have opportunity in the future to look at those parking policies.
Yeah, thank you. And the final thing I would say, I suppose, is I don't have a problem with the principles. I have a problem with, as I said, the decisions that we make and the complexity that we're put into, where in some cases at the moment parking is at a premium already. Then further developments come in, and all of a sudden now we've got 2 hour restrictions, we've got no parking, got to move on, resident parking only. So the question is the residents that are there now, where it works, and then people come in and it now doesn't work, and all of a sudden now you're penalising the residents that have been there in a system that works and saying, well, now it's not going to work for anyone. We're going to stuff you all up because these new people have come in and not enough parking is provided. So I think our principle also should be that we shouldn't be stuffing around the community where it works and then introducing a system that doesn't work and penalising everybody just because the state government hasn't provided enough parking. So we need to get that message out to people, whether it be through signage or whatever, say, you know what, this is a complex parking problem here. And it may not be part of the development application. We might stick a sign up front and say, you know what, if you buy a unit in here, you're going to have nowhere to park, just so you know that in advance. We're telling you right now, and don't complain to us afterwards. So that's all I'll say.
Thank you, Councillor Kristicevic, and your concerns are noted. Though I dare say the principles are guiding principles, and with the human element of council, I do believe that we will see highest and best outcomes overall. I will go to Councillor Proud now to close.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Good debate. This is what we're doing. We're dealing with parking issues beyond state government legislation, JDAP and WAPC. This is what we're dealing with because they will always be the determining authority in whatever case as planning control gets taken out of the city, and all local governments are faced with this. And the way we deal with that, it might be resident parking permits. That's the way to go. We've got a formula or a process that we roll out to do those sorts of things. One thing that does irk people is having to renew it every year, but the reason is you might have another person coming in or whatever. You need to have the same person, like 1 year, you want it again, you renew it, following year for till year dot, or you might change and it needs to go to the next resident with a different registration number. Also, waste collection days. So that is an issue for some areas, especially in Scarborough and other areas. They are so bumper to bumper parked on both sides of the road. What do they do on bin days? This is also an issue in Loo. And those people have taken matters into their own hands by putting their bins out into the cycle lane or on the side of the road, so that nobody can park there, so that the bin collection truck can get in to get their bins. Otherwise, they've got to they get a call and they're back either later that afternoon or in the morning. That's all ratepayer cost to the city. There's also, you know, an obligation by purchasers when you're buying into a densely populated area, and there's a few of them. There's Mirrabooka, there's Innaloo, Doubleview, Scarborough, certainly. You would actually need to be asking the question, how many bays are there and is there on-street parking? Because we've had people that have had 5 sons, or they've got 5 cars, and even they've got cars that don't actually fit in their garage. Now, whether the garage is too small and not compliant, I don't know, or the truck is a massive one of those really tall wheel things that they have in the US for racing. What are they called? Yeah, those really big ones. So I don't know. So there's reasons. Or they're using their garage, their double bay garage, for storage. It's like, and they need on-street parking. This is about what we're dealing with. People that don't want any parking controls, they want the whole street clear, free and clear, and then there's other people, one street over or 300 metres up the road, that have got issues. So talking about, Councillor Kristicevich mentioned going around a bend, that's a real problem, and I would have thought a yellow line would be painted around one of those sides, or when it's approaching a crest. This is what engineering does. Notice you have to go through engineering to put in an inquiry to see if that's valid. This is about getting those sorts of things through if the sight lines are, you know, within distance 70 metres or whatever. So this is about addressing all that stuff. This is the residual of what we do deal with, and our officers deal with it incredibly well. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Proud. There being no further indication, I'll now put this to the vote and ask you to use your electronic voting. Thank you. You all in? Thanks, councillors, and that is unanimous. All right, Councillor Proud, would you like to please move the balance of reports with the exception of item 12.18.1, which we will deal with behind closed doors?
Thanks, Madam Chair. I'll move the balance of the report, removing 12.18.1. Thank you.
And can I have a seconder? Councillor Kristicevich. All those in favour? Just show of hands. Yep, unanimous. Thank you, councillors. Members of the gallery, the remainder of the Planning and Development Committee recommendations, with the exception of those items to be dealt with behind closed doors, have been adopted by exception resolution.
Andrea.
Moving now to item 13 on page 41 of your agendas. We have reports for consideration in accordance with section 4.24 in brackets 4 of the Meeting Procedures Local Law 2021 on page 41. So we'll go to item 13.1, 2025 Committee and Council Meeting Schedule. Councillors, do I have a mover of a motion? Councillor Dudek's half raised his hand.
Yeah, happy to move the recommendation on page 41.
Thank you. And Councillor Ferrante?
Yes, acting mayor.
Seconded. Councillor Ferrante. Is there anyone opposed?
I've got a question.
Are they just questions, Councillor Proud, Councillor Reid? Or, yep, just questions. I'll allow one question each.
Well, actually, I've got 2 really quick ones. First of all, we usually do this in November. I'm just wondering why we're doing this in
This is
August.
Fair question. Let's ask the CEO. Or Mr Blanchard.
Thank you, Acting Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Proud. We have always tried to do this report soon after Council returns from break, as we include the meeting dates in the city's calendar.
Yeah, I can prove it's been done in November for ages, but that's beside the point. And I'll just ask my same question that I asked last year and probably the year before. although the year before it got changed. Is there any councillor elected member of the have an appetite to change the this council meeting, the ordinary council meeting, to 7 o'clock instead of 6:30?
Thank you. Noted. Mr Blanchard?
Thank you, Acting Mayor. There have been changes to the timing of council meetings. They have been done in a considered manner after workshops with council, and we would need a strong indication from council to change the time of the meeting.
Thank you, Mr Blanchard. Councillor Ree, your question.
I can remember that the council meetings were at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. They were also at 7 o'clock at night, so I think 6:30 is fine, in my opinion. Anyway, I was going to say on page 51, why is it the councillor recess? Because it's not necessarily the council law. It should be council recess, not council law recess on page 51.
Mr Blanchard?
Could we
Thank
change
you,
that?
Acting
Because
Mayor.
it's
We
the
are happy to
staff having
change
rest.
that.
It'll be amended. Thank you, Councillor Ree.
I think out of respect
Thank
for
you.
everyone.
Thank you. Councillor Christicevic, we are not entering in debate, but if you have a question, I'll allow it.
I would only be asking questions because it's question time on this particular issue.
It's not question
No
time.
one's debated against it. Well, you don't want to ask questions, you want to debate. Okay, questions, sorry, I do have questions. I noticed that planning meetings and the community resources meetings are obviously spaced out between each council meeting. Now, I've also noticed since I've been here that on occasions we've had both of them on the same, at a council meeting where planning and community resources have been on the same agenda. By spacing it out, I know tonight's gone a little bit longer as well for other reasons, but are we padding it out? I just can't see why we couldn't do both on, a planning meeting, a CRC meeting, and then a council meeting, a planning meeting, a CRC meeting, and a council meeting, and doing both of those. So we have less council meetings.
Sorry, do you mean on the same night?
No. What it is that it's a planning meeting, council meeting, community resource meeting, council meeting, planning meeting, council meeting. So it's a council meeting every 2 weeks, basically.
Mr Blanchard, for comment,
so
please.
my comment is really, why do we have so many council meetings? Can't we just...
Okay.
We have a CRC committee
Understand,
meeting, we have a
Councillor
planning committee.
Christicevic. Mr Blanchard, for comment, please.
Thank you, Acting Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Kristovich, for the question. Page 42 sets out the principles that we follow in setting the meeting schedule. One of those is no double council meetings, because in the past we've found that when we put two major committees up to the one council meeting, it can be a very long meeting. These principles have been set by council over recent years and have guided us as we develop the time frames for the council meetings, show the timetable to the executive and then the mayor. I can tell you it's a dark art. If we were going to move away from that principle, we'd want to do so in a considered fashion.
Yeah, just one last question. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure we've had a fair few planning and CRC meetings at a council meeting up to this point, where both of those agendas have been on a council meeting. Is that true, or am I mistaken?
No, Mr Blanchard.
There must be occasions.
Yeah, well, it just depends the nature of the mid-year recess, the timing of public holidays. It depends on, and what day the year starts on even depends on when the council meetings can be set. If memory serves me correct, we're about to have a double committee meeting to council, so that'll be sending through to the council meeting on the 17th. So we'll all see what that looks like.
And my last question is that when you set this, obviously this just came to us and said this is what's going on. We didn't get a chance to have any input beforehand, other than obviously at the meeting itself. So if we have got ideas or whatever, or brainstorming, people have other ways maybe of thinking about doing it, how do we actually input into that process rather than just sort of get it on the day?
Mr Blanchard.
Thank you, Acting Mayor. It's a great question. I think that a few years ago we did set out these principles that will guide us in putting the calendar together, and that was generally agreed by council. If it's time to revisit those principles, then let's sit down early next year and go through them and have a think about how this council wants to do its business, so that when we get to August in next year, we'll have the principles that this council wants to guide the development of the calendar for the following year. I think that's an appropriate process rather than trying to rush through a changed calendar based on different principles now.
No, thank you.
Thank you for those questions, Councillor Kristicevic. I will just go to, I understand, Councillor Ray, you have another question. I'm just going to go to Councillor Ferrante, who has indicated it's questions only. Otherwise, we will enter debate, and I don't wish to enter debate if you just have a question.
Thank you, Acting Mayor. I just have one quick question for the Governance Officer in relation to if we were to do that strategy that was proposed by Councillor Kristovic in regards to attendance fees. Would that go up? Would we get paid more if we did that?
Mr Blanchard.
Thank you, Acting Mayor. The councillors are currently paid the maximum allowable for Band 1 councils set by the Salaries and Allowances Tribunal, so the short answer is no.
Thank you for the comment. I'll go back to Councillor Reeve for a final question.
Yeah, thank you for that. I was just going to ask whether or not that we used to actually have a housekeeping committee where suggestions from the council were all put into this housekeeping committee, which was stopped by councillors anyway. But I was just going to say, with the civic building being upgraded, can we get in our bag something to say exactly what's going on?
So nothing to do with the council meetings? Mr Blanchard?
Yeah, one of the things on the calendar, it says we need space for that, and I'm just saying, because we're now bringing it back to November, there's no meeting in December.
Understand. Mr Blanchard?
Thank you. Yes, that council had placed funds on the budget for this financial year for design works for the civic facilities upgrade. We are currently finalising the scope of those design works, and once the next set of designs are completed, there will be further consultation with elected members. I'll provide a more detailed update for you so that you can be across this stage of the project.
Thank you for that.
I just have a point of clarification. I just need to make an apology.
What's your point of clarification?
I need to make an apology
Councillor
to governance. I was actually talking about the November, the use of the reception hall for the following year. That's what I was getting mixed up with. So you're right and I'm wrong.
Duly noted. Thank you so much. I'll now return to Councillor Dudek, even though we haven't entered debate, for the opportunity to ask any questions or close.
I'm all good, thank you.
Thank you, councillors. Let's go ahead. I'm going to put this item. Let's vote. And that is unanimous. Thank you, councillors. All right, councillors, moving to item 14, notices of motion for consideration. I have nil. Item 15, notices of motion for consideration at the next meeting. Councillors, are there any indications? Do you have any proposed notices of motion that you would like to raise at the next meeting? Councillor Papard, did you indicate?
Not as yet, Acting Mayor.
Thank you. Well, you can speak with us later on regarding that item. No indications. I'll move to item 16. Questions by members of which due notice has been given. I have nil. New business of an urgent nature. Item 17, I have nil. Item 18, matters behind closed doors. Councillors, we'll now consider item 12.1, 8.1, behind closed doors, and I will just give Councillor Criado a moment to leave the chamber. Can I please have a mover and a seconder to go behind closed doors? Councillor Ferrante moved. Councillor Giudice seconded. Was that a hand up, Councillor Giudice? Yes. All those in favour, show of hands. Unanimous. Thanks, councillors. quickly. Okay, and I now declare the meeting closed at 8:23 p.m. Have a lovely evening. Drive carefully. That was lots.